Look at that. It's got the red, white, and blue on it, man.
Yeah, man. That's a beautiful truck.
Mike Wolfe built a 15-year career convincing America that anything, a busted motorcycle, a moth-eaten carnival poster, a coffee can full of rusted nails, deserved a second chance, as long as the man doing the convincing wasn't the guy who'd been riding shotgun with him the whole time. Frank Fritz and Mike Wolfe spent over a decade digging through the same barns, chasing the same so-called rusty gold, and somehow only one of them walked away with a second antique store, a movie career, and an emotional farewell to Nashville written entirely on his own terms. The other walked away with nothing, then stopped walking altogether, and died in a hospice bed in Iowa at 60. 3 years after the show he helped build, decided it no longer needed his half of the van. They pitched themselves as two equal partners running the same hustle.
Back in the day. But when I seen this picture, I'm like, this is something I'd like to have.
Splitting the same risk, honoring the same handshake deal code. What actually split down the middle was who got to keep being American pickers once the cameras found something more profitable to point at. Mike Wolfe is still out there expanding his empire one barn at a time. Frank Fritz's name now shows up mainly in in memoriam title cards.
Don't have a lot of KISS stuff, but this isn't something that's mass produced. Time to buy something when you see it.
Wedged between commercial breaks on a network that used to call him the bearded charmer. Same barn. Two men. Only one of them got to keep picking. Long before either of them had a camera pointed at their face, Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz were two kids at Sudlow Intermediate School in Davenport, Iowa, bonding over the exact same disorder, an inability to walk past a pile of someone else's discarded belongings without needing to know what was in it. Wolfe spent his childhood cutting through alleys instead of sidewalks because that's where the open garages were. Frank was collecting beer cans, rocks, and stamps with the kind of seriousness most kids reserve for baseball cards. And by high school,
I wouldn't kick his butt if he doesn't.
All right, yeah, I don't want to get this bad boy wet here. You never know, it could short circuit out.
he had a Harley-Davidson habit he funded by stocking shelves at a hardware store, proof that his relationship with expensive, semi-functional objects predated any television contract by roughly 3 decades. Mike took the scenic route to reality stardom, competitive bicycle racing, then 2 bike shops in the 1990s, proof that his real talent was never the product, it was always the pitch.
These are what I really like.
Do you?
Oh yeah.
This is the largest collection of Mark's toys on display.
A skill he'd eventually apply to himself, with far more success than he ever applied it to bicycles. When he finally pitched the idea that would become American Pickers, he spent 5 years getting networks to say no before one said yes. And the only person who never doubted it for a second was the same kid who'd been hoarding beer cans with him in middle school. A&E eventually greenlit it. History Channel picked it up.
Kind of reminds me of my wife, going around circles all the time.
And in January 2010, 2 men who had spent 3 decades perfecting the art of finding value in things nobody else wanted finally got their first real audience. Which is, in hindsight, a strange origin story for a friendship that would eventually treat one of its founders exactly like everything else they ever dug out of a barn, useful until it wasn't, then quietly left behind. By 2017, the arrangement that had made both men rich started showing its first real cracks.
These toys are cool because you had to have an imagination, flying that through the air.
And only one of them was visibly cracking. Frank Fritz was arrested that year for driving the wrong way down an Iowa interstate, high on a cocktail of alcohol and Xanax that would have ended most television careers on the spot. American Pickers barely mentioned it. Frank kept appearing on the show in the seasons that followed because a network built entirely on turning other people's damage into content had apparently developed a blind spot for its own. Mike, meanwhile, was doing what Mike always did, expanding.
$6.75, but I think that would be the best.
You gotta do. This place is getting me junk drunk.
Between seasons, he kept adding to a personal brand that now stretched across 2 antique archaeology stores, a philanthropy arm, music projects, and a growing media profile that positioned him as the face of the entire Pickers genre, not just its Iowa half. Frank supplied the show's soul. Mike supplied its business plan and business plans, unlike souls.
I first seen you guys.
Yeah.
I seen you guys on American Bandstand.
That's right.
And then
Come with contingencies. It stopped looking sustainable in 2020. Frank underwent major back surgery that year.
Over the last 8 years, Frankie and I have been very fortunate to meet some pretty famous people.
an operation made necessary partly by the same Crohn's medication that had been quietly weakening his bones for years, proof that a chronic illness doesn't pause for ratings. The surgery left him with 2 rods in his spine and, eventually, an addiction to the painkillers prescribed to manage it, stacked on top of an alcohol problem he was already fighting. He checked into rehab that year, 77 days at the Abbey Center in Bettendorf, and came out sober enough to want his old job back. He never got the chance to prove it. History Channel required clean drug tests before he could return to camera, a paperwork requirement that turned out to be the only part of the show's "everybody deserves a second chance" branding they actually enforced. He never got another shot.
And ended up living in New York City and flying in and out all over. And we had fun.
For over a year, the network described his absence to fans as temporary, health-related, nothing to worry about, the standard vocabulary networks use when they haven't decided yet whether someone is still useful. In July 2021, they decided. No goodbye episode, no tribute segment, just a press release confirming that Frank Fritz would not be returning.
Sure.
I went through
Probably have the carburetors cleaned out a little bit.
Yeah, you got to do the carbs. You know how that
It's a good looking bike.
Delivered with all the warmth of a store manager announcing a discontinued product line. Frank later said the part the press release left out, Mike hadn't spoken to him in nearly 2 years. Not during the surgery, not during rehab. Danielle Colby, the show's 3rd lead, publicly sided with Mike, suggesting Frank's own behavior had earned the silence. Fans picked sides anyway. By the 3rd week of the next season's premiere, ratings had fallen from 1.05 million viewers to under 860,000, which meant the man who'd spent a decade being the show's emotional ballast turned out to be load-bearing after all, just not to the people who'd built their brand on the word authentic. Mike's answer to the backlash was to keep moving, the same instinct that had built the brand in the first place.
Danielle said you are the sweetest man in Tennessee.
Yeah, good.
She said you've been collecting for a long time.
And it turned out to work just as well on public relations problems as it did on rusted tractors. His brother Robbie stepped into the passenger seat, the show carried on, and antique archaeology kept selling without so much as a dip in foot traffic. The man who'd spent his whole career explaining that everything deserves a second look had apparently decided that policy applied exclusively to inventory.
Cruise into any barn and there's a bunch of old motorcycles in it, that's a good day to be a picker.
Never to people, and certainly never retroactively. Then, in July 2022, Frank had a massive stroke. He lost his ability to speak and to move on his own. A judge appointed a guardian to manage his care, and a local bank took over his finances, which meant a man who had built an entire career on his ability to spot value other people had overlooked could no longer be trusted to manage his own bank account. Something almost happened here that complicates the tidy version of this story. In May 2023, Mike and Frank reconciled. Wolfe visited. They talked about a possible return to the show. It didn't happen. Frank's recovery never got far enough, and the reunion fans had been demanding for 2 years arrived quietly, off camera. The first honest moment this partnership ever produced that the show's marketing team never got to package and sell back to its audience. On September 30th, 2024, Frank Fritz died in a hospice facility in Davenport, Iowa. He was 60. The official cause was late sequelae of cerebral infarction, complications from the stroke 2 years earlier, with aortic stenosis and COPD listed as contributing factors. Mike was at his bedside. He held Frank's hand as he took his last breath and later told People magazine that before the cameras, they'd always been exactly the same, which might even be true. Life and the business kept moving. 7 months later, Mike Wolfe closed his Nashville store, not because it was failing.
About 5,500 for it.
5,500?
But because after over a decade, he wanted to slow down and be closer to family. A decision he was allowed to frame entirely on his own terms, with an emotional Instagram post and a farewell weekend. Around the same stretch, he made his film debut in a Western called Day of Reckoning. One more line on a resume that kept growing even as his former partners had stopped growing altogether. After the cameras arrived, only one of them got to stay that way. The next question is why? The easy explanation is that Frank got sick and Mike didn't, but that explanation only survives if you ignore who was sick first. Frank's Crohn's disease was diagnosed in the 1990s, years before either of them owned a camera, which means the show didn't create his vulnerability. It just spent 16 years filming a man haul furniture out of collapsed barns while a disease quietly ate away at him from the inside, for a paycheck that never once accounted for the difference. Mike's job was the idea.
75 years old, but I'm on trade weed.
Frank's job was the labor, and in a business built on turning other people's forgotten things into profit, the guy doing the lifting was always going to be the first thing declared expendable. Then there's the harder truth, the one neither man said out loud until Frank was too sick to argue about it anymore. In 2021, Frank told The Sun he didn't believe Mike had said 5 kind things to him in a decade, and that Mike's official statement about his exit was, in his own words, bullshit. Somebody wrote it out for him. Mike, for his part, has since said he tried to help, that he looped in Frank's family, that it simply hadn't worked. After Frank died, Mike was describing a friendship that had been warm, uncomplicated, and unbroken the entire time. All 3 versions came from the same 2 men. Only one of them was still alive to keep revising the story.
Basketball court,
Oh,
guys.
jeez.
No way.
It's a major room inside here.
That asymmetry is the actual answer to why one survived and one didn't. Mike had a brand sturdy enough to absorb an unresolved Better Business Bureau complaint, accusing the store of deceptive sales practices, filed by a customer in the summer of 2022, and never publicly resolved, the exact kind of loose end that would have sunk a smaller operation and keep moving inventory without missing a beat. Frank had a body that couldn't absorb one more diagnosis, and a network that only wanted him back with paperwork proving his bloodstream was clean. The same network that had spent 15 years selling the idea that everything deserves a second look, provided the second look didn't cost anything to insure, which is, in the end, the least romantic possible way for this story to resolve. American Pickers built an entire brand on the claim that nothing is truly worthless if someone bothers to look closely enough. It turned out that Promise had a warranty period, and Frank's ran out first. For 15 years, American Pickers ran on the same premise it used to open every single episode.
To see that much stuff. I mean, he had old train cars, he had old steam engines, he had old architectural.
That Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz were exactly what they looked like, 2 lifelong friends who happened to get famous with a camera crew in tow. And for a while, that wasn't even false advertising. It just turned out to have a shelf life, same as everything else they ever pulled out of a barn. The math is simple enough to state without embellishment. One of them is dead at 60. The other one is still opening stores, still making movies, still narrating a version of their friendship in which nothing was ever really wrong. Whether that counts as surviving or just outlasting depends entirely on what you think a partnership is supposed to survive.
4-2 out of Chicago.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, that's old.
No seat.
Even the show itself hasn't fully recovered from picking a side. Season 27 premiered in July 2025, 9 months after Frank's death, to just 390,000 viewers, the biggest single drop in the program's history, which means the audience did something History Channel never managed to do while Frank was alive. They noticed exactly how much of the magic had been him all along, and they noticed it 9 months too late to matter. Like, subscribe, and remember. On this show, everything got a second look except the guy who spent 15 years finding it.